but hopefully it works okay tonight. My internet's out, so gotta love it. Just wanted to make a few quick announcements. Number one, this is the biggest one. I'm currently now simulcasting on YouTube. Huge breakthrough. That's gonna be big. I don't have to edit down my videos and put them on YouTube. That way I can just stream live directly to it. So please go to the Gordon Porter Show on YouTube, like and subscribe. And also, if you feel comfortable, like this video and share the video. Another quick announcement. This episode is brought to you. We have a sponsor now. Any food I could get my hands on. I know what you're thinking. It's been 3 weeks. And man, has he lost weight? Look at him. He looks thin. He looks peaked. Well, I hate to disappoint you. I've actually gained weight since we last spoke. But the world continues to spin, albeit at a much slower pace because now it has another moon living in the panhandle of Florida. Let's get started on the First Amendment. I think that is critical, especially what's going on right now. I mean, since we've last spoke, I think the word or the sentiment that describes the past month is never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. I think George Carlin nailed it. If he only knew, if he were alive today, I have no idea what side of the fence he is on or would have been on or would be on. I don't really care. But he nailed it when he said whatever it was I just said. I'm good at this, aren't I? Never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. And stupid is a drop in the bucket. All right, let's get started. First Amendment. All right. How many of you, and please either comment or, however you want to do this, I'll just assume that you know. We'll just do it that way. How many of you know how many rights are addressed in the First Amendment? It's the only one that has more than one. It has 5. It has the the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom to peaceably assemble, the freedom of the press, and the freedom to petition the government with a redress of grievances. Redress of grievances is difficult to say, which kind of puts a strain on the whole freedom of speech thing, but it works. Is it a coincidence that there's 5 in the First Amendment and is the only amendment that has 5? I'd say it's not a coincidence. The founders were living in an era and in a world that anything that you said could get you imprisoned or killed. The founders are also living in an era where anything or however you worshipped and whoever you worshipped could get you killed and or imprisoned. Now, that's where people kind of go, well, there were Christians in the world they were living in. Christians were trying to stop people from worshiping, and it was the Christians' fault. Well, that's partly true, also partly not. The Christians were persecuting other Christians. So it kind of kicks your argument in the tail a little bit there. Probably gets your foot stuck too. The First Amendment has 5 rights for several reasons. Number 1, all 5 are equally important. All 5. Are you kidding me? All 5. Sorry, commercial break. All 5 are equally important. They're also equally most important. Sorry, my wife was just coming in here to tell me that the internet cut out. So all 5 are equally most important. These 5 operate as cogs in a machine. So without one, the machine stops working, or at least doesn't function as intended. Okay? So what is the first cog? Well, the first cog is freedom of religion, and typically, believe it or not, it's actually Christians that have the biggest trouble with this one, at least in my experience. They say, well, if the founders were Christians, why on earth would they give everybody the freedom of religion to choose who they want to worship? I mean, we don't like Muslims. We don't want Muslims worshiping how they want. If the founders are really Christians, then they would have made you be Christian. If they would have made anybody who comes here be Christian. Well, maybe not. I would disagree, and I really think the Bible would disagree, and I'll show you. The first cog in the machine requires churches to step up and bring people to Christianity, freedom of religion. We want everyone here. We want Muslims here. We want anybody and everybody who wants to come to America. We want you here. But that puts a responsibility in the church's lap, and the church as an umbrella term. And that's why people don't like it. The freedom of religion means that the church, Christianity as a whole, has a responsibility to use their freedom of speech, which we'll get to in a minute, to make sure that people hear about Christianity, hear about Christ, hear about God, hear what he died for them to do, or what he died to protect them from, to keep them from. That's our responsibility as Christians to do that. And that's why they put this charge to Christianity in the First Amendment. The freedom of religion allows you to witness to people and to bring people to Christ who otherwise wouldn't, because they're not allowed in the country. Okay? All right. Everyone is welcome here, as I said. Now, the second cog. The second cog is it's the drive wheel. It gives the power to the machine. Without that one, the whole thing shuts down and cripples up into a worthless lump. Okay? The second cog, what is it? Well, let's look here. Actually, I should have did this a minute ago. The second cog is right here. Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof, meaning religion, or abridging the freedom of speech. That is the cog. That's the drive wheel. The freedom of speech. Okay? Without freedom of speech, then religion, Christianity in particular, that the founders were overtly Christian, and they were very much for the spread of Christianity. But without the freedom of speech, that can't happen. So the founders saw fit to put this in the first article, the First Amendment, to protect the religion's ability to speak. Okay? That is directly out of the Bible, as well as what I was talking about a minute ago, where, the freedom of religion. And I'll show you. 1 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 9. Now, this is out of the King James Version. This is the version that the founders had. This is the version that I particularly am partial to for many reasons. But this is the one that we're going to use because I think it is most close to their vernacular, okay, or to the founders' vernacular. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 9 says, this is God talking. This is after Samuel. Here, well, let's just back up and read this whole thing. It's very little. And it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made sons judges over Israel. Now, the name of his firstborn was Joel, or as they say in Ireland, Joel. And the name of his second, Abiah. They were judges in Beersheba. And his sons, Samuel's sons, walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre and took bribes and perverted judgment. Now, does that sound familiar? Taking bribes, perverting judgment. Sounds like somebody we all know. Not somebody, but some people we all know. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord, and the Lord said unto Samuel, what did he say? Hearken unto the voice of the people and all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. Verse 9. Now therefore, again, remember, this is God talking. Now therefore, hearken unto their voice, howbeit ye protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. Now, what is it saying there? What is Samuel recording that just happened here? God is allowing these people to speak, even though they are asking for something that God does not want, and actually in later chapters of this verse calls pagan. In fact, this chapter calls it pagan. Judge us like all the nations. Israel is the only non-pagan nation on the planet right here. So they're saying, give us a method of ruling that is not God's method of ruling. And God says, you know what, Samuel? Listen to them. Let them talk. They have a right to talk. That's bizarre. I thought God was this evil angry overlord octopus in the sky, as Glenn Beck likes to call him, and actually several people like the giant spaghetti monster is the atheist version in the sky. That guy, that spaghetti monster in the sky, is open to other opinions besides his. Now, he knows they're wrong, but he's okay with you expressing your opinion. Hearken to the voice of the people and all this antute, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me. Verse 9 says, howbeit you protest solemnly unto them. In other words, you rebut what they're saying calmly and with facts, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. Okay? So what's my point here? God right here gives man the freedom of speech. Actually, he gave it in Genesis in chapter 1, but that is expressly noted here in 1 Samuel. Okay? Now, the third cog in the machine, let's go back here. The third cog in the machine, right here. Now, this one has really caused us some heartache lately because the press is nuts. But the important thing to remember here about this cog is the press is not the press as in like, hey, I'm a member of the press, extra, read all about it, okay? The press, what they're talking about here, what would the founders be calling the press? The printing press, the machine, the freedom of the press, the freedom for you to have, let's see, how would you put that? You have the freedom to write. You have the freedom of speech through written word, okay? That's the freedom of the press. And also what's interesting is you could write down on paper everything you wanted to, but what does the printing press do? That gives what you think, what you've written, that gives other people access to that and easy access to that. Once you start printing with the press, your opinions, your thoughts are now public. They're published. Okay? So the freedom of the press is critical here too. Again, this is a cog driven by the cog of freedom of speech, the drive wheel of freedom of speech. Now, again, this being a machine, this being a 5-cog machine, that protects what? If it's the press, and part of one of the other cogs is freedom of religion, what does that protect? The printing of Bibles. Why would they be interested in that? Well, up until about 1780, sorry, I'm playing with a pencil. ADD, sorry. I've lost my train of thought. Up until about 1780, let's see, what year was it exactly? 1777, and we'll come back to this in a minute. I'll show you in a second. Up until 1777, we only had access to the King James Version. Now, King James, of course, is the guy that printed the Bible way, way back in 1611. Okay, he printed the King James Version Bible, the authorized King James Version Bible, and that was our only Bible at the time. That was the only version available, was the King James Version authorized. Okay, now that came from where? England. Okay, well, about 1777, our relationship with England wasn't great. In fact, it was horrible. In fact, we were at war with them. In fact, we were revolting against them. Interesting. So that means that our supply of Bibles were completely cut off. Entirely. Now, I'll grant you, this article was written well after this point, but this is why this article was written, was to keep this from happening in the future. Their supply was cut off of Bibles. So let's read this little piece right here. This guy is John Adams. Now, he was on a committee in Congress that was the printing committee, the Bible committee, the Christian committee, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember exactly what they called this particular committee, but the committee, in this particular case, there was a guy named, I forgot his name, Robert Aiken. Okay, Robert Aiken came to Congress after the supply had been cut off, and came to Congress and said, hey, supply's been cut off. I need to print some Bibles. Well, the events leading up to that, right here, let's see. John Adams, give me just a second here. I had it highlighted and now I cannot find it. Okay, here we go. All right, so there was a group of clergy that addressed Congress and said, we need Bibles. We need them bad. The supply's been cut off. We need you to do something about it. So the people who took that, the clergy that took that to Congress, took it to a particular committee in Congress who was in charge of things like that. John Adams was a member. Right here it says the committee composed of John Adams, Daniel Roberdeau, and Jonathan Bayard Smith. The committee recommended the use of the Bible is so universal and its importance so great. Hold up. I thought that there was a separation of church and state. The state has no say in what goes on. We're not allowed to say that Christianity is the best religion. We're not allowed to push that on people. Is that what they thought? Because right here, John Adams and the rest of his committee of founding fathers says the use of the Bible is so universal and its importance so great that your committee refers to the above to the consideration of Congress. The committee recommends that Congress will order the Committee of Commerce to import 20,000 Bibles from Holland, Scotland, or elsewhere into the different parts of the states of the Union. Now, if that were to happen today, if our American Congress were to say, you know what, the Bible is so important to to where our country is heading and to the longevity of our country, we're going to go ahead and order 20,000 Bibles. Now, at the time, the United States was only about 3 million people total over 13 colonies. So 20,000 Bibles is a pretty significant percentage of the people who are living here. To put that in perspective today, you're looking at 2 million Bibles, 20 million Bibles that Congress is ordering from other countries so that we have the Bible here. Freedom of the press later comes along. We don't have to do that. But point being is Congress did it. All right, so that's the third cog, freedom of the press. Now, libertarians like to say, and I kind of associate some with libertarian ideas and principles occasionally, but they have kind of a bad habit of putting up idiots to run for president, and some of the things they believe are really off the wall. But point being is they are among the worst of saying when it comes to social media in particular, we've dealt with the censoring and all that good stuff, that it's really been a problem that they're censoring speech. Libertarians say, well, social media are private companies. They can do whatever they want. They own the company. They have every right to do whatever they want. Do they? The Declaration of Independence said the sole purpose of government is to protect your God-given rights. You have a God-given right to free speech. So what that means is literally that's one of the government's only jobs is to protect your freedom of speech. Okay? So in Facebook and Twitter, and Facebook's allowing me to say this right now, but the fact is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they have been censoring people. Okay? And people have been getting uptight because government, or at least Congress, has really tried to tamp some of that down and say, hey, you can't be censoring people and silencing the freedom of speech. Well, there's constitutional and Declaration of Independence authority there for them to do that. All right, let's kind of get going here. I'm at the 20-minute mark, and YouTube is not going to be happy with that. The fourth cog is the right to peaceably assemble. This protects churches in saying whatever they wish to say as long as they are peaceable. Okay, that's another thing we've been watching lately. Churches are getting shut down for basically nothing, while people who are violent are tearing our streets apart, and they're allowed to do whatever they want. That's antithesis to the Constitution and to the First Amendment. The government cannot shut the doors of the church unless they begin to be violent. Now, there's plenty of cases of that in one particular religion, and it ain't Christianity. The fifth cog, I'm going to keep moving here. The fifth cog is the right to petition. Now, why is this so important for the founders? Okay, the right to petition, that's the Declaration. That was a petition of redress of grievances to the king. So naturally, of course, they believe you have a right to do that. And it's a God-given right. I'm running out of time. I wish I could show you more. But maybe I'll do some more next week on the last two here, since I'm kind of skirting through it. But why is that a right? You control government. Why is right to petition the government for redress of grievances? I told you that's a hard one to say. You control government, not the other way around. The right to petition is the right for the people to tell the government peacefully what they're doing wrong and how they believe best to correct it. And they have the right to peaceably do that. Then, on top of that, the Declaration of Independence says not for light and transient causes, but eventually, when the petitions go, they're falling on deaf ears and they're doing whatever the heck they want and trampling all of your rights, you have a right to abolish such government and to provide new guards for your future security. Guys, I'm going to leave it with you there. I'm a little over my time. YouTube, I believe, cuts me off 15 minutes, so the end of this will not be on there, but the first parts, the most important parts, at least I think, are on there. Please, again, go to the Gordon Porter Show on YouTube. Like, subscribe, like this video, share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can. I really appreciate it. I love you. Take care. Be safe. Watch out for rioters. Watch out for coronavirus. I found one in my backyard yesterday and shot it. So that was a close one. Love you. Take care. Be careful. And I will see you next week.